Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome investigative journalist Laura Loomer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome investigative journalist Laura Loomer.
Now, if you don't know Laura Loomer, I'll just tell you, it's so interesting, Laura, because you've been in some kind of fight, right? For years.
That's an understatement.
You could almost be called one of the first fighters, because you know what I remember, and I was I wasn't new, but relatively new to covering politics, is the day you stood up in that hearing and you yelled about censorship. And you weren't attacked as much as you are right now, but they were like, But I remember that because I knew that was going on. And then it started happening to me greater and greater and greater. And I've never forgotten that you did that.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here today. I want to thank Mike Lindell for inviting me to speak to all of you. And I've had a career in investigative journalism and in activism, got my career started working with James O'Keefe at Project Veritas, and then after that, he does great work, of course. And, you mentioned the censorship. Prior to getting my account back on Twitter in December of 2022, I've been banned for 5 years, and there was a point where I was the most banned woman in the entire world, and I still am banned on every single social media site, with the exception of Twitter to this date, simply because I was warning people, really as a canary in the coal mine. And I remember that day in 2018, September 5th, when we had the first congressional hearing on tech censorship, and Jack Dorsey, of course, was testifying in front of Congress, and he had said that they were not using algorithms to censor conservatives, and I stood up and I called him a liar, and I was escorted out by the cops. And I hate to say it, that was a committee controlled by Republicans. Okay, so when we look at the problems in our country today, we want to know how we got here. Okay, well, during President Trump's first administration, for the first 2 years, we had a Republican-controlled House, we had a Republican-controlled Senate. So there's your answer, right? It's Republican cowardice that has resulted in the silencing and the censorship of patriots like you. And you did, and we have to call it out. Yeah. And not only have you called it out, you actually got in the race. You ran for the 11th district in Florida for a seat in Congress. Yeah. I ran twice, actually, and so when I was deplatformed everywhere and I was shut down, I was shut down from my bank, right? So I was one of the first people who this really happened to, and now, of course, it's gone mainstream, so everybody understands this whole cancel culture issue, and I decided, wow, this is going to eventually happen to Donald Trump. They're going to ban the President of the United States, and people said that I was crazy and that I was a conspiracy theorist, and so I said, I'm going to run for Congress to address it, running first in 2019, 2020, and then, of course, 2022. And my campaign was actually the first deplatformed campaign in United States history. We were the only campaign denied the ability to create social media accounts, and you can imagine how hard that was in the middle of COVID when Governor Ron DeSantis locked down the state of Florida. I know he likes to say he did otherwise, right? But we were locked down in Florida, not able to knock on doors. And so that's a problem. And then, it got so bad that even Comcast, an internet service provider, blocked my campaign from sending texts and emails. So that's election interference, right? And even though President Trump endorsed me and even voted for me in 2020, and I won my primary despite all odds, the GOP didn't issue a single statement about the censorship of conservatives. And so if we are going to, reclaim our election integrity, if we are going to combat the cancer of voter fraud and get the greatest president ever, President Donald J. Trump, back in the White House and reelected for a third time, then we have to start calling out the Republicans who are doing nothing to speak out about this voter fraud. Since the stale election of 2020, has the GOP done anything? Have they filed any lawsuits in support of President Trump? There's been lots of strongly worded emails. Have they filed a lawsuit lawsuit against any of the big tech social media companies? What are they doing aside from tweeting their statements about President Trump's recent indictments? What are the Republicans in Washington doing? The answer is nothing.
And I know why I think that is, but why do you think that is, Laura?
Because it's a uniparty, right? It's an illusion of choice. We don't actually have two parties in this country like they tell us, okay? It's the uniparty versus the patriots of this country. It's us against them, and it's one big club, and we're just not a part of it. And the reality is the Republicans, and no one wants to talk about this elephant in the room, the Republicans were just as much as involved in stealing the election from Donald Trump as the Democrats. They were.
Alone, without the help of the Republicans.
Oh, absolutely. And now they're they're trying to criminalize speaking out against stolen elections. They're trying to criminalize patriots showing up and asking questions about our elections. They're trying to criminalize political speech and what was once, right, I guess it doesn't really exist anymore, our constitutional right to petition our government for grievances. Okay, hello, January 6th, anybody? That is what patriots were doing on January 6th. And so we are losing our country, and I honestly do blame the Republican Party more than the Democrats, and I say that as a lifelong conservative activist because, at the end of the day, we know what the Democrats' game plan is, right? But we would not be in this mess today if we had strong leadership from Republican elected officials, but instead, right, none of them, how many of them actually really spoke out about all of the fraud? They're too scared. Where are they today?
Maybe two.
Where are all the elected officials today? Where are they?
Maybe two. So I have to ask you, Laura, because like you said, you're the canary in the coal mine. I know you weren't surprised by what happened because you've seen it coming for years and years and years. Do you feel, though, now that you're not such a lone ranger, that more people are involved and they're aware? Look how people responded when you said that about Republicans. I think prior to the 2018 midterms, I don't think people would have felt that way or you would have gotten quite that response.
Well, people are awake now, and the thing is they like to call themselves the silent majority, but we're not silent by choice. We have been silenced, and we have to reclaim our voice. And we're not going to reclaim our voice by sitting back and playing nice in the sandbox with Republicans. I think that one of the most detrimental things to the Republican Party is Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment about not speaking ill of any other Republican. It's time to put Reagan's 11th commandment in the shredder on high speed.
And if you feel bad because they use the term Republican, just remember, they're really not anyway. The majority of them. It really is a uniparty, and if you spend any time in Washington, you see it in 5 seconds.
The GOP base, is with Donald J. Trump. There's MAGA, and then there's the uniparty, okay? There's MAGA and there's the uniparty. And I would say that most Republican voters today, they feel as though they have been completely abandoned by the party. The party isn't actually representative of the pro-Trump MAGA base. They don't even believe the election was stolen. To this day, the RNC has not issued a statement admitting that the 2020 election was stolen. They don't believe it. So how are these people supposed to represent us, and why do they expect people to show up to the polls in 2024 unless they're actually going to prove to us that they're committed to implementing policies and practices to combat another steal?
How much do you think it trickles down to the local level, though? I mean, we know this of the national Republicans, but how much on the local level?
Well, it's happening on a local level. It's happening in states. There are people from all over the country here today who I've spoken to who have said that as Republicans, their issue wasn't combating Democrats or the Democrat Party or Democrat elected officials in their state. It was corrupt Republican establishment officials who utilized the voter fraud machine to silence voters and steal elections.
And that's why it's important for people to get involved on the local level. And before we run out of time, Laura, I do have to bring up, because you're getting a lot of attention from Donald Trump himself, and he invited you to dinner the other day. So why don't you just give the people in our room what that was like
Yeah, so actually what happened was I was in New York where I was giving a speech to the New York Young Republicans, and I wasn't aware that Donald Trump was going to be at Bedminster for the rest of the Live Golf tournament, because I thought he was going to be in Iowa all weekend. And when I found out he was going to be at Bedminster, I had extended my flight and I went over there just with a regular general admission ticket. And Trump recognized me on the golf course, and he came over and thanked me for all of my investigative reports exposing Ron DeSantis, who does not believe that the election was stolen, another enemy to the election integrity movement. And so, to my surprise, and I'm, elated, I just can't believe it actually happened, President Trump invited me to spend the day with him in his private suite at Bedminster, and I was able to watch the golf tournament with him, and he was just so gracious and so kind, and he's such a wonderful person, which is why I take it so personally when he's attacked in the media, because this is a man who gave up a life of luxury to fight for all of us, okay? He could potentially face the rest of his life in prison because he decided to fight for election integrity and speak out against the uniparty and stolen elections. And we have an obligation to raise our voices and exemplify courage instead of hiding in silence and cowardice like every member of the Republican Party in Congress today. And we need to fight for President Trump the same way that he fights for all of us. This is actually our first time getting the media process. I've known about you for years, and we've, exchanged comments online, but you're very brave as well. You walked away from, you'd have to tell the story yourself, but you refused to take the vaccine and you were punished for it by corporate media. And so you spoke out at a network that has a policy of not speaking out against stolen elections, and you said hell no, and now you have a very successful career doing independent media as well. So you're very brave as well, Emily.
I don't do what to do when I go wrong. Laura Loomer, you're just an inspiring person. It's so good to meet you, and thanks for being there early on. Not a lot of people can say that, right? She was fighting the fight early on, and we applaud you for it.
Thank you.
Be sure that you're liking the stream, retweeting it, sharing it, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. Be sure that you share it on Truth. Follow me on Twitter, Getter, Telegram, and also please be sure that you visit goldco.com/Laura Loomer. We really want to make sure that we support our sponsors, since our sponsors are supporting me and the patriots who are tuning into this live stream. So be sure that you go to goldco.com/Laura Loomer. We are living in extremely volatile financial times right now. Inflation is through the roof and everybody's feeling it. Every time I go to the grocery store, I spend over $250, and I'm just a single woman with 2 dogs. But things are getting hard out there, and you want to make sure that you protect your family by backing up your assets and your wealth with gold and silver. So go to goldco.com/Laura Loomer, and also be sure that you show some appreciation to Mike Lindell. He's facing nearly $8 billion in judgments against him. Potentially, he's going to be deposed all next week because he's taken a stand. He's put millions of dollars of his own money into fighting against election fraud. And so one way that you can support Mike Lindell is by going to mypillow.com. Check out his slippers. I have the dog beds. My dogs love the dog blankets and the dog beds from MyPillow. I personally love my MyPillow mattress topper. I have the sheets. I have everything because, Mike Lindell is such a nice guy. He sent me the dog beds. He sent me the blankets. He sent me everything. So mypillow.com, and when you select your products, be sure you use code Loomer, my last name Loomer, for savings up to 66%.